sustained climate movement within Port Phillip, and to build a sustained climate movement. And the group that I'm in within the network is actually Stopadani Macnamara, where I've been a convening member since 2018. I'm co-hosting today's event with Ed, who is also with Pecan through his involvement with the Australian Youth Climate Coalition, who is now very involved in Progressive Port Phillip. And of course, we have Cat from Young Campaigns, who will facilitate today's training. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. I'll ask that you stay on mute just while we get things started. There'll be plenty of opportunities to come off mute, have a chat with other attendees and discuss ideas, etc. But for the moment, you might like to just introduce yourself in the chat. And if you have any questions or queries throughout the session, just put it in the chat and we'll be monitoring that if there's anything we need to take care of. So I'll pass over to Ed to give a little bit more of an introduction.
Hi everybody, and welcome. As Bryn mentioned, my name is Ed and I'm part of Pecan, originally from the Australian Youth Climate Coalition, as a representative from that group during the 2019 federal election, but now working with Progressive Port Phillip on the local government elections, which are going to come up very, very quickly. Progressive Port Phillip is an organisation that is campaigning to keep our local community creative and compassionate, and we're fighting against some pretty strong forces that are advocating for council just to focus on roads, rates and rubbish. But instead we're bringing together a movement in the beautiful city of Port Phillip to fight for something a little bit different. We're not running candidates, but supporting any candidate that has some bold ideas for our future and generally supports the progressive values that we align to. And we're lucky to have partnered with Pecan tonight to run a training on organising, and we also have some other trainings on media and also stepping up and getting involved in local climate action and local campaigning. We're really lucky that tonight has been supported by the Future Leaders program. So somebody who is a part of our team has made a financial contribution that means that we can run a training and upskill all of our teams just before the local government election and get really ready for a big campaign, and also train an awesome group of people locally so we can continue to hold the councillors that are elected to account on both the climate emergency and keeping our local area progressive in some of the other key and essential services that we currently provide, like social housing and childcare. We have the second highest proportion of social housing in the country, and one of the only remaining local government areas to provide subsidised childcare services that many are advocating to get rid of, but we continue to fight to keep them in our local community. So that's a little bit of an introduction into some of the groups that are involved in putting together tonight. And we're also recording the session is something that I wanted to mention. So if anyone is not happy to be recorded, send me a message and we can work something out. But I think that's all from me. Maybe back to Bryn.
Oh, well, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Cat Nadel from Young Campaigns, who is going to take us through today's session. So yay for Cat.
Thank you, Cat.
Thanks, Bryn. Thanks, Ed. So lovely to be here. And thanks for introducing yourself in the comments. That's wonderful. Please keep doing that. And we'll also have a moment where we can do some more verbal introductions as well. I might quickly start by introducing myself. I'll just share with you my slides because I have some here. Can you see? Can you guys see that okay? Are you just seeing the sort of slideshow in it? Okay, cool. So my name's Kat. I'm from the Tomorrow Movement, which is, so I am from Young Campaigns, but our main project is the Tomorrow Movement. So that's sort of our public facing name now. So we're a relatively new movement of young people. We're fighting to end the influence of big business on our politics and win a society with good jobs, great public services, and a safe climate for all. And we work collaboratively with a bunch of the other climate and economic justice movements out there. But yeah, you can look us up later if you want. I maybe just quickly start by introducing the story of how I got involved in community organizing for climate action. Basically, I've always known about climate change. I I don't really remember learning about it in school. I just know that I was taught about it in school, and I have this sense that our worry about climate change has been like with me through like most of my time growing up, and it affects how I think about the future. But the first time I ever took any action on the issue was when I was at university. I was really excited to be at uni and learning lots of things. My favorite thing to do was like sit on the grass in between classes and talk to my cool new friends. And one of them one day started telling me about the university's endowment fund and how it was being invested in coal and gas companies. And I just remember being really angry because here I was at uni, like, you know, kind of making all these sacrifices to be there and like study really hard. And, you know, feeling like it was a time when I was meant to be preparing for my future, getting an education, thinking about my career and my life. And yet at the same time, the university was investing money in the companies that were ruining the planet and my chance at a safe future. And it made me really angry, and it made me want to do something. And so luckily, my friend that I was talking to knew about the fossil-free movement, which was sort of beginning to happen all across the universities and councils across the country and the world. People organizing basically to get the institutions they were part of to divest their money away from fossil fuels, based on this idea that if it's wrong to wreck the planet, then it's wrong to profit from it. And so with some of my new friends and some existing groups on campus, we formed a group, and we basically did all sorts of organizing to get the administration eventually to divest from coal. The fight to get them to divest from gas is ongoing, but they are also, I was on the Clayton campus transitioning to a 100% renewable campus as well now, which is exciting. But there's a lot more in that story. There's a lot of things about what we did to put pressure on the administration and what worked and what didn't work. But I mainly just wanted to tell you about how I got started in it. And I wanted to do that because I think sharing stories is one of the most important tools that we can share as organizers. Because it lets each other know, you know, why we're here, like that we really do care, that we're not just, you know, people showing up and saying stuff, but also because I guess it lets you know a little bit about like who I am and what I believe in. And I wonder if anyone felt like sharing. Did anyone notice any of the any values or any things I touched on in that story that resonate for you, or that are sort of, you know, present in your story? Are there any I guess words? I'm just going to stop screen sharing for a second so I can see. Feel free to jump in the chat or say it out loud.
Yeah, I think the divesting publicity and strategy can be an effective one, especially with us grey hairs, right? The privileged ones. To have 18-year-old people telling us that our enjoyment of life now is dependent on things that are subtracting from their prospects. So anything that we can do for promoting this idea, this not just idea, but this fact amongst the grey hairs, I think we should do it.
Cool. Thank you for sharing what came up for you. I guess maybe what I'm going to get you to do now is, and Ed, are you able to organize a breakout for us? Is that your job? Yes. Okay, cool. Thank you. So what we're going to do is in a moment, we're going to break into pairs and I'm going to ask you to share with your partner a little bit about your story. So it doesn't need to be as detailed as mine was, but I just basically want you to say your name, a reason or a story that tells your partner a little bit about why you care about fighting for a safer climate. And or a simpler way to do it might be just like, what made you come along today? Is it like Don said, you know, concern about future generations and like that equity? Is it something more personal? Is there someone in a future generation, like a child or a grandchild, that like is in your mind when you think about climate change? Don't let me tell your story for you, tell it yourself. Ed, if that's okay, we're going to break out now just for 5 minutes and we'll send a reminder when we're halfway.
Perfect. They should be opening now.
Be brave. Someone share, please. I'm going to do this a lot on this call, so it'll be way less awkward if we just all get in the habit of it.
Out of there.
Yeah. When Belinda was talking about the influence of being a parent and looking on her kids, and I was just talking about looking at my nieces, refocuses your thoughts about, you know, their future prospects and things like that.
Awesome. That sounds like a really lovely thing to connect on, and I can see some children there in the frame providing inspiration right there.
Oh yeah, I've got noise cancelling headphones on, so hopefully you don't hear too much.
Excellent.
They are definitely the influence for me. I was talking to Damien about that, so it makes a big difference, yeah, when you have to think about your kid's future and you don't want to have to just be complacent about it.
Absolutely. Anything else? Any other examples besides children?
Oh, and from my the temporary partner there, Lynn, thanks for expressing the things that most concern her. But from that, what comes up in my mind is chatting amongst each other to try to get the most effective strategies, whatever that is. May I add that I've lived most of my time, the last 30 years, in ASEAN, in Asia, and coming back to Australia this year. So I'm very interested to find what Australian people are doing about strategies for improvement. Thank you.
I really connect to that, always wanting to talk about, you know, yes, we agree. Now, what are we going to do together? And like, can we find alignment there? I think that's a really big part of organizing. Would anyone else like to share? Yeah, any values you connected on?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think Seb and I probably am a year on from where Seb is. So Seb is doing his personal things and he's looking to make a larger impact. Stop me, interrupt me if I'm not getting this right. Firstly, on a local level, but you know, looking to see what can be done at a local level, and then subsequently on a larger level. That's probably where I was about just over a year ago, and but you know, when after the election, some friends and I started a group which has grown bigger than we expected, but we're still not quite sure. And I guess I'm coming to these sessions because I want to know how to focus the group. So the group is called Grandmothers for Climate Action. Yeah. And I was explaining that grandmothers is a non-threatening entity, that hence the name. We're not all grandmothers. We've got about 200 in the Facebook group, but I feel there's only about 20 or so people who actively engage in strikes and writing to politicians and so on. But we've got 200 people in that Facebook group, so I'm looking to see how we can bring it in and focus people a bit more.
Awesome, cool. And yeah, nice to be able to recognize folks along a journey, and I maybe identify where you are, where you're in the same place, where you're in a different place. So good. Okay, I'm going to move us along to another exercise, but I just want to, mostly say thank you so much for sharing where you're at, and to sorry, I'm just looking for a link to share to you. Next, can folks come along in here? This is a link to the slides that I was sharing before. So I'm going to invite you to jump in there if you can. I think most folks are on a computer. You can do this on an iPhone, but it might be a little challenging, Lynn. So let me know if that doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is, invite you over here onto slide 6. So I should be able to tell when you're mostly in here. So slide 6 is a spectrum. So we're going to jump right into a conversation about how does social change happen? Like how do we think about how do we make the change we want to see? So I want you to so you can click on one of the stars and drag it to where you agree with somewhere along the line. So the question is, how does social change happen? Big social change happens and sweeps individuals along, or do individuals lead sweeping social change? So I'm going to move my star away so you can't be influenced by it. But just put it on somewhere where you think is right to you. And speak up if you're having any trouble with the technology.
Yeah, I don't see which page you're referring to now.
Oh, sorry. So page 6.
No, don't be sorry. That's my lack of familiarity.
So have you clicked onto this link that we shared?
No, I missed that one.
That's okay. Okay, so there's a link in the chat. That's a Google Docs Dash presentation. And if you click on that, it should open up in your internet browser. And then it's like a PowerPoint presentation style. And if you scroll down to slide 6, there's a slide with a question and a bunch of stars.
Okay.
But we can have this conversation the old-fashioned way if you don't manage to move your stars. So I'm seeing already a very small cluster around individuals lead sweeping social change. So could I get someone who placed their star there to share with me why you put it there?
I put mine there because I think that I guess when you look back historically, that you know, you often seem to have examples of those sort of charismatic leaders that can harness that feeling of perhaps social discontent or, you know, pent up frustration with a particular systemic problem, and they tend to come to the fore. I don't know. I mean, you think of anyone from, you know, Gandhi through to Martin Luther King through to perhaps AOC, or, you know, they're sort of examples of people I'm thinking of.
Fantastic, thank you. I love some good examples. What about someone else?
Yes, a little bit same, but also we've been looking at the lack of action of all the governments in the last couple of years. So that takes us to get the flag, and like we have to act, because we cannot wait anymore for governments to act for us. So I think that's where we stand right now.
Yep, I relate to that feeling. We just can't wait. Okay, did someone place their star here in the middle? Did you want to share why it's there?
Yeah, me. Look, I think I put it in the middle because I don't think, you know, I'm just sort of thinking, for example, the suffragette movement in the UK. You know, I saw the movie The Suffragettes, and then there was a talk up about it afterwards. In the end, what tipped it over the line was a woman who threw herself under a horse, and it was like, wow, someone cares about this so strongly that they're willing to give their life. But it took 50 years of women protesting for them to get the vote in the UK. And yes, this mattered, but I think if she had done that 30 years before or 40 years before, it wouldn't have. I think it's a conflagration of, you know, bigger social change and individuals and all of these things coming together. You know, the Martin Luther King thing, it was a lot of different things happening. It wasn't just one man and his speech. It was a lot of things coming together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there can be sort of trigger moments that no one really expects or knows what influence it will have. But if there is also those social movements building behind, they can take advantage of that moment or not. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Okay, I'm going to take us to the next slide. So slide 7, and ask you to do just one more spectrum. So tell me, move with your star, power is held by individuals like institutions and governments, or power is held by people in the community?
We can't hear you.
Oh, that's because I'm not talking, because I'm waiting for you to move your star. Is everyone in the slide?
No, I lost it.
That's okay. I'll share the link again. Okay. All right, lots of a few folks in the middle there. So who's this one? This I love that you went with a shape that wasn't a star.
Yeah, again, that was me. I don't know how I did that. No idea how I did that. Look, I think power is held by the institutions, and that's why it's so frustrating that we have so little power. You know, we yell and we fight, and ultimately it's, you know, it's the big corporations and it's the governments who have the final say as to how we go.
Okay, thank you. All right, what about someone whose star is a little bit more over? I know we're pretty much dead on the middle there. Yeah, who's this? Anonymous Giraffe is what it comes up for me.
I think that's me, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I was being boring and going smack in the middle because to me, it's really both. I remember a talk Barry Jones gave a year or so ago, and he said, look, you know, one of the remarkable things about the way power is exercised in Australia is you've got a small group of people in institutions of government, and you've got a large group of people who are the rest of us who've got an enormous amount of power because we outnumber them, you know, many times over, thousands of times over. But it's just not exercised. That muscle is not flexed. But I think it still means that the power is there. It's just a matter of it being harnessed, I think.
I'm seeing some nodding. Do folks agree with that?
The numbers are there, but because of our unique history and culture and opportunities and other distractions, the focus is not there. Therefore, the energy is not brought to bear on critical matters. There's a writer called David Malouf who wrote a book called The Spirit of Play. And that's how he, from immigrant parents, that's how he saw the Australian society, that play was so much more attractive than anything more considerate.
Interesting. All right, I'm gonna move us along. So I'm gonna share my slides again. So I won't ask you to do anything in the slides again for a little while. So you can jump out of there for now and just focus on the Zoom if that's easier for you. So fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing with me your reflections on power. I think this is a really important concept for us to like grapple with as we think about organizing and trying to achieve change on the scale that we need to. So I think it's, you know, and I don't have all the answers absolutely, and like that's why it's a spectrum. It's because we can go many different ways with it. But I think it's important for us to think about. So have folks seen this picture before?
No.
I'd love to hear any reflections you have on what's it trying to say, and particularly at this point, if you haven't said anything yet, I'd love you to speak up.
The people have the power, and if they want to use it, then they can change the leaders that are elected.
So how, in this situation, how can they use their power?
Well, they jump off the plank.
That's right. That's right. And so, and from someone else, like why aren't they moving? What happens if, you know, just a few of them trickle off?
Well, from a pure work health and safety perspective, if they all hop off and that's a high cliff, well, he's not going to last very, very long. So there could be a safety issue for him. But I mean, some people can get off, and I guess once a few people do get off, other people are more inclined to. But there's safety in numbers as a general rule, and that's why, you know, that Facebook stuff and the ability to influence elections through Facebook is so powerful, because you can make out, even by bots and things like that, that there's a lot of agreement with a statement that may not actually be true, and a lot of people may not actually agree with.
Yes, I'm going to leave the Facebook stuff for now, because that's a whole other conversation that we could have. But yeah, absolutely. So it's in this situation, I mean, I don't know the exact physics of it, but I think if only a few people step, about like half the group steps off, you know, it feels like it'd be a risk for the whole group. Like, it feels like the most successful thing would be for them all to step up at once, and that way you'd be sure that only the guy at the end fell down and not a few people along the way, and that, but also they're all facing forward. They're all looking at that one guy. So they're not aware of their group power in that way. So I'm going to take it. So have folks seen this concept before? These two views of power? Damien gave us a pretty perfect summary of it before, but this idea that most people think of power like this view over here on the left, like these guys when they're facing just that one dude at the end of the plank, in that we put all our power in institutions and people, but actually those institutions are held up by many people and by other more intangible things like social licenses. The way that I first understood this best was when someone explained it to me, like, do you remember when you're in primary school and one day a substitute teacher comes in? I remember in school we had like really strict teachers sometimes, and then they would, if they had to take a sick day, they would send in someone who had no idea how to control the class, and we would just like, we would be throwing things, we'd be doing whatever we wanted, and the teacher couldn't get us to focus on whatever it was they were trying to do because we were just being rat bags. And in those moments, it's like, oh, actually, the teacher only has the power when all the students sit and listen to the teacher. In that situation, the students had all the power in the room and the teacher couldn't really do anything until the bell rang. But normally that wasn't the case, because in normal school times, we just thought, our teacher's the boss, we do what he says. And so this is this idea that if you change the conditions and if folks realize they can all step up at once, then we can have this social view of power. But like both are true, right? It depends how you interpret it and what people do with it. Is that making sense to people?
Yeah, may I say, I like the color scheme. The left side is black and this time the right is red. But we, in Australia, for a long time, for 180 years, we've regarded ourselves as a very democratic and populistic and so on. But we should ask the question, why have we moved so much, particularly in the last 40 years, towards monopoly power? The one that concerns me is the media, and another one is the control of political parties of all kinds by a central secretariat, which attracts money from donors. In the marketplace, we see the extreme polarization or monopolization of the, what's the big four? Amazon, Google, what's the other two? Facebook and something else. But we, despite being the most democratic and participatory and open society, our important institutions have gone monopolistic. And I think that affects, that discourages a lot of people from even getting involved. It's just so overwhelming to the ordinary citizen who's got the option of going to the footy instead.
It certainly is overwhelming. And I think there's another conversation we could have about, I guess, analyzing the forces of capitalism and neoliberalism and whatever other isms have brought us to this moment we're in now. I think what I'm going to do is park it for now, because I've been brought here to chat about community organizing and just particularly how we can, and so I'm going to keep us focused for now, but up for that chat later. So what is community organizing? I'm going to ask here someone who hasn't spoken yet to read this definition for me. Perhaps one of our friends, Hashwina, are you up for reading it?
So organizing is a form of leadership that enables a constituency to turn its resources into the power to achieve its goals through recruitment, training, and development of leadership. Organizing is about equipping people, the constituency, with the power, story, and strategy to make change that is real outcomes.
You. And sorry I picked on you. I'm going to do it one more time. what words in that definition stand out the most to you?
I think equipping people with power.
What does that mean to you?
I think like literally what we're doing right now. Educating people with the resources and the knowledge to make about change in their communities or groups.
Fantastic. Someone else, what are the words here that you think are important and jump out at you? Ed, would you like to share?
I sure can. I guess, like as we were talking about before, it's the combination of people and power that probably pops out to me most. Yeah, and I really like that that definition. Organising is about equipping people with the power to make the change. That's it for me.
David?
I think the people with the power, that's the key. And if we can't...
Sorry, I missed some of that. Could you say it again?
I think it's the people with the power that stands out for me. That's what it's all about. It may be that the power is centred elsewhere, and we have our frustrations with our current political leaders, but we have got an opportunity in October. We've got council elections, and there's opportunity to build from the ground up.
Great. Fantastic. So that's like, yeah, I think you can read this definition a lot of different ways. And to me, I think people in power are probably the words I'm going to say most over tonight. But to me, community organizing is the thing that like takes us from this to this. It's about like creating a shared vision with folks that you can actually see what are your shared resources, what are the things you can do together to achieve that shared purpose that you have. So that's what I want to take us to now. And I'm not sure how this is going to go because I know this group hasn't spent a lot of time together, but I gather we're here basically in the context of the upcoming local elections. And I'm interested to know like what are the goals here that we're working towards? How can we define them? Yeah, maybe Bryn, could you start us off with a bit of context?
Yeah, I was wondering about that because there's a lot of people from a lot of different groups here today. So maybe we can all share our individual groups and what those goals are. But from a PCAN perspective, heading into the election, it's having climate as an issue that council is focused on. Obviously in COVID, that's it's more difficult than it would have been normally. But a lot of our members are at the council meeting tonight looking at the budget and getting sustainable practices in council to be a priority. Yeah, and another huge goal of ours is actually community education. So looking at how we can act as educators to the community, how we can work with council to partner in that education as well. That's something we're really working on. So yeah, a goal is to be a trusted body. I don't know. Yeah.
Can I ask, is community education a separate goal, or is that part of the goal towards getting the council to be more sustainable?
I suppose they're all sort of connected in that in council being more sustainable, a lot of that requires working with the community. And I think making that change happen requires a lot of knowledge. And yeah, I suppose we want the council and the community to be on the same page with that knowledge. So yeah. I think it's connected, but yeah, it could be a different goal for sure.
It can be two goals. I'm just trying to understand. could I ask, someone else to share your group's goals, or especially if they're like, similar or different?
Well, BCAN and BCAG, we are the next door neighbours to BCAN, and we have common goals with the council election. The community education is important because councillors respond to the community. If they recognise that the community they have community support, then they will act, but they won't act in isolation. So they need to know, it's as Bryn says, it's a parallel action to bring the people along so that their representatives, the council, will be encouraged to act.
Fantastic. Can anyone build on that?
Yeah, so if we keep travelling down the Nepean Highway, in a sense, to the City of Kingston, Zero Kingston 2030, which are the equivalents of PCAN and BCAN, we're moving towards, well, we have as our goal for Kingston to become a net zero carbon emitting community. But to do that, we need to do a lot more around community engagement. And it's there that I think we can draw on people's collective wisdom and experience and intelligence to then gather support for political change.
Cool.
And I can probably share for Progressive, Port Phillip, as well. We exist just to get some progressive councillors elected that will then, on council, push for strong action on climate change and similar issues. Potentially, we've gone all the way back down to the other end of the Nepean Highway.
Excellent. That's a lot more.
Mate.
Cool. Okay. So this was excellent because my next question, as you can see, was going to be, do we need people power to achieve that goal? But most of you articulated, yes, we do, because we're not going to get the councillors to do anything we want unless they can see that it's popular in the community and that it'll have that community support, which is great. So it means there's like already this kind of social view in play potentially. So I'm wondering, can we get more specific on, like, this group is a group of many different groups. Why are you all here together on this call? Like, why are you working together?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Take a step back, actually. Because the group that I'm part of quite consciously doesn't have any specific goals. We'll kind of do whatever it takes, wherever it takes. And I've sort of going backwards and forwards in my own mind about whether that's the right way to go. So my question to you is, do you feel a group needs specific goals to work? We're kind of like a group for hire almost. If someone, starts something and they need people, we'll post it on our page and we'll communicate it, but we're haven't got specific goals. I'm just asking you, is that a bad thing not to have specific goals?
I'm not going to use any words like good or bad, but I will say that we are going to get into, after we're going to have a quick break at 7:30, and then after that we're going to get into like, what do strong teams need? And I would say that for me, like, I think teams do better when they have a clearer sense of purpose, when they know why they're involved in this group and not some other group. And even if it is a clear part of your strategy to be like a gun for hire, like, why is that the role you're playing? Why is that and it could be that, you just have a fairly broad mandate, like we join in action on climate change, or we get grandmas involved to get that specific moral angle actions, and that means you don't necessarily need to organize your own actions. You want to go to other ones, but I would just say you need that slight level of specificity so someone knows why they're part of that group.
Yeah.
So is that okay if and we'll spend a bit more time on that towards the end. Can I come back to this question of what are we doing here together today? Why are we building this alignment and this understanding together?
I reckon that's a great question for me, Kat. So I think that we're a pretty diverse cross section of local climate groups, and we're all kind of going into the local government elections, and in Port Phillip we're doing a pretty big campaign, and I think that some of our neighbours are also running similar campaigns, and we mostly want to build skills within our teams of volunteers that we can take back to our larger groups and get planning towards our goals. So for Progressive Port Phillip, we have kind of very short-term goals for the Port Phillip elections, and then there are some other groups that are here represented here tonight that, for example, don't have as clear goals or just are generally community groups, but we would love to have the skills in building those goals and working towards those goals, because I think if we're all doing that in this space, we're not only going to see better solutions for the climate emergency, we're also we're going to see some better solutions at the election, and I think we'll all benefit from our neighbouring local government areas responding in better ways and more creative ways to the climate emergency locally.
Fantastic. All right. Does anyone want to add to that? Or
yes.
Well, you could add to it. It's really a practice, if you like, for the federal elections, which are coming up next year, where again we have the opportunity to have our voice heard.
Great. And sorry, someone else was, yeah. Oh, sorry, you're just muted. Hang on a moment. Risa, can you unmute by pressing, oh, yep, go again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, my concern is heritage. I chair the organization called Brighton Resident for Urban Protection, and heritage is a very important part of what we're about, not just in Brighton, but in Bayside in general. Of course, climate change that I belong to as well, etc. But heritage, it's something that we're losing so much of it. And we've got a lot of good heritage in Brighton, not just buildings, but heritage protection of trees and other buildings, churches, etc., etc. We've lost a number of churches that should have been protected, etc., etc.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that, and reminding us of the diversity of interests in the room, and that environment and protecting it means a lot of different things. It's absolutely right. Like, these skills, we don't have to be specific to climate today. Like, we can use them in lots of different ways. I'll just come back to the slides. So because we are such a diverse group, I won't spend time going deep into this now for your individual groups. But so this is the criteria that I use in groups that I'm part of in setting goals. So when we're trying to pick a goal that together unites us for whatever work we're doing, the criteria I focus on is, number one, is it strategic? Is it clear, like, what we're doing? So focus on a single outcome. So I really like this one, Zero Kingston 2030. That's a very clear goal, because it's time bound. We'll know in 2030 whether it's been achieved or not. And it, I mean, I guess there are probably lots of different ways to define whether something is or isn't zero emissions, but broadly, it's quite clear what it is. Whereas action, participation, so it's a question about, like, why would someone want to get involved? And, it's like, you want to know that people in your community care about that heritage, and that's going to motivate them to get active. And if it isn't, then maybe that focus isn't going to be something that's going to motivate a lot of people. Sorry, I'm using your examples, but I'm not meaning to cast any judgment. I know lots of people are motivated to protect heritage. Leveraging resources. So this isn't necessarily, this could be leveraging resources can mean a lot of things. So resources doesn't necessarily have to just mean money. It can mean time and skill. But the question is like, is it resources that your community has that you can use to achieve your goal? So you want to identify what those resources are and who has them. Is it measurable, visible, clear? Feedback, how do we know if we're making progress? That's pretty self-explanatory. And does it build capacity? So this is this one about, you know, should we get together and like all learn these skills and work really hard to try to achieve this thing? Actually, the elections is a really good example, because maybe you'll work really hard and your candidate won't win, but you'll have built a team of people who have learned a lot of stuff and can go again at the state election or at the federal election, and you'll have built that capacity there and grown that consciousness. If it's something that you know, you only need one person to do the activity, like they write a letter to the paper and that solves the problem, then it probably didn't build capacity because they didn't bring anyone along with them and they didn't develop any skills. So I would encourage you to maybe take this tool, if it resonates with you, back to your group and apply it to these goals. And even as a lot of those are like, you've shared really high level goals with me, and I'm sure probably in your groups you have knowledge of a few levels down, like exactly what sustainable practices mean, or like some more specific commitments that you're seeking out of the council elections. I'd encourage you to like drill down a bit and see if your goals fit this criteria. And then to go through this next step of articulating your strategic goal. So what I'm going to do now is suggest that we have our 5-minute break, and that after we come back, we're going to talk about building strong teams, and then we're going to talk about recruitment. So specifically, how do we grow our teams, if that's something that we want to do. Yeah, so if you'd like to come back at 7:33, that would be excellent. Stay on the Zoom if you can. So just I'd put your camera and your voice off.
I think it's good to have people informed in what you're doing in a team, because otherwise it kind of defeats its purpose.
Trust, so that you know you can rely on someone to do what they're going to do.
Cool.
Yeah. Number one, reliability.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think there's also this idea here that like you're interdependent on each other. Like that's why you're working together on a team, is you need each other. Like, so you have to rely on each other.
Yep.
What else?
Diverse skill set.
May I say, I think a common vision has been worked out,
Yeah, shared purpose.
Shared purpose through consensus, right?
You have been listening to me. Okay, yep. What else?
Respect.
Respect, yeah. Often some like that goes a bit deeper, like you might have some like shared norms, you know, things like if you set work, you know it's going to get done, or you know, you respect each other's time by showing up at the meeting on time. You respect each other's diversity by being curious and not making assumptions. Like there's a lot of things different ways we show respect and ways we set up our groups.
May I suggest another one is a specific challenge. If the team does not have recurring challenges, it will soon become divisive.
Yeah, cool. So it's like you have a specific focus or a shared strategy. It's bounded in some way, like you're not always working, you're not just always meeting together to stop climate change, you're meeting together to stop climate change by organizing voting better councillors at the local election. Yeah, cool.
I think too, when a team's engaged in, you know, really serious work like this, it also helps to have a sense of fun as well, just to keep perspective on the fact that you know, we are mortal and can only achieve so much.
Get the balance right.
Yeah, totally. People gotta want to go, want to do it. Yeah, great. Yeah, and this is also related to this like companionship and relationship. Like you get something from being there as well. I was going to add, the only other one I want to add is, I think, like bounded. I think it's important to know like who is and isn't on your team. And that is, you know, are we on teams that anyone could join the team, or only people that want to work towards climate action in Port Phillip during the election? Or do we want, I think it's, because it can be hard, like, yeah, I think teams need to know like what are we people doing here together, and you know, do we want a few more people and who are they? But you want to be able to like, yeah, know what you're all doing there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But may I add that related to that is we can't abandon being judgmental. We all have a feeling of how the team is progressing. So we have to have some mechanism or some sensitivity of judging whether we're on the right track or not. You know, we have companionship. Yeah, we all love companionship, but
we want to measure our progress, Don.
It's progress and impact and the quality of those changes which we are contributing to.
Don, Alan Beam, who was Greg Combay's Chief of Staff, wrote an excellent book called, I think it's called No Prime Minister, and it was about being a Chief of Staff for a team of people, you know, in this case in Combay's office. And one of the things he spoke about was a continual conversation that they had around internal values and external values.
Yeah.
Very beneficial in a high pressure environment.
Who was the writer, please? Sorry.
Alan Beam, the former diplomat.
Oh, okay, thank you.
He was Combay's Chief of Staff. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, so this list can go on, and I encourage you to like continue making it with your teams, and to think about the ones that are most important in your circumstances. I guess the other one, and it's kind of related to like this norms and respect, but you know, if part of your shared purpose is like making impact, do you have ways that you can like, you know, safely challenge each other if you feel like you're not on track to achieving your goals, or if something's going wrong in your culture and you're not respecting each other? Do you have ways to, I guess, reset your team culture or your strategy if you need to?
That's about honesty.
Sorry, may I add one just thing, quickly thing? The way the Greens had their internal fights, particularly with their senators, is a lesson for well worth looking at.
Yep. There's always yeah, when those things play out in public, adds whole other dynamics. Much to be studied there. Sorry, David, were you going to add something as well?
I did, but I forgot what it was now.
That's all right. We can come back to it. All right. Oh, Risa?
Good memory.
Okay, so I'm just going to introduce this one other concept, which is this idea of heads, hands, and heart. Has anyone seen this before?
Yeah.
No.
David, do you want to share what it means to you?
Well, these are different ways of leading. Your brain tells you the logical way forward. Your heart tells you what you believe and what you feel is the way forward, and your hand can direct one or the other.
Yeah, okay. Yep. That's I think leadership styles is like, yeah, absolutely a way to use this tool. The way I use it in the context of teams is sort of about diagnosing, like, what does this team need? But you can also use it like with leaders and like one-on-ones as well, because it's this idea that we use all these things all the time, and our teams do too. So often if like I'm in a team and we're like facing a problem, I'll use these concepts to try to figure out like what is and what needs to happen. So if it's a head problem, it means we don't know what to do. We've got a problem, we don't know how to solve it. And it's maybe we don't know the path forward. Like, we don't know what do we have to do to engage this really important constituency that we need to influence the election. We don't know that, and we need to like talk to other people or think about it differently to find the answer. If it's a hard problem, that's motivation. So maybe we the team's just not feeling it right now. Like, why is that? Why are we not motivated to work on this? Is it because there's a global pandemic and we're all exhausted? Or is it that this thing that did seem important doesn't seem as important right now? And if it's a hands thing, then it's a skills thing. So it's like, we're not having any success recruiting new people to our group because we don't know how to have recruitment conversations. We don't have that skill. Or we are not having any luck on social media because we're all technophobes and we don't know how to use the internet and we just need some help. Or we need to recruit some other people that know how to use it better. That's a skills problem. It could be a motivation problem if none of us want to go online anymore because there's only bad news. So this is just a tool that you can like bring up with your groups if you're like trying to figure out what is it that you need to work on as a team to help you achieve whatever it is you want to do. Have you used this with teams or with leaders, David?
No, not in the way you've used it, Kat, no.
Could people see themselves using it?
Oh, sure. All tools are helpful. Different people respond in different ways. Some people respond to pictures, some have to see something to understand. And so we all bring our own level of perception. And so different tools work with different people.
Yeah, it's true.
Sure, David. In my own work, we subdivided the hand and made another one, another circle called voice, because in the context I was working, communication was just about everything. Yeah, the people were disadvantaged, very low education, very low literacy, very much repression by governments, etc. And so they wanted to pull voice out to be a distinctive tool and factor in the result.
That's really cool. That's a really interesting innovation on it. Okay. Does anyone have any other like questions or things they want to raise about teams at this point? Otherwise, I'm going to pull us into our conversation about recruitment. It looks like we lost. No, Hannah, you had some questions about teams before. Have we answered them? Is there anything you wanted to pick up here?
No, I'm just happy listening at this stage.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions or just like thoughts they're having about teams that they want to share at this point?
How much does Hannah charge to get on our team?
We're free.
Excellent.
Worth knowing, Hannah. I'll be in touch.
Ask for snacks next time. Okay. Well, we'll have some more time for questions at the end, so we can come back to this. The next thing I want to do is chat about recruitment. So the first conversation when you're like, we want to recruit, and this is like a thing we hear a lot, right? Is like, our group needs more people. And the question I always want you to ask yourself when you're having that conversation is why? Why do we need more people? What are they going to do when they get here? So what are some answers to this question? Why do we recruit?
Because we need a job done.
Yeah, great. That's a really good reason. What else?
We need new ideas.
New ideas, cool.
And new knowledge.
We need more diversity.
Diversity. Why is that important?
Because one cohort has common knowledge and experience, and diversity in gender or age or background or experience or skill sets all adds to the mix, so that as a whole you complement each other.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
The new recruit might have their own network.
Yeah, that's great. This is another one like that also relates to this diversity one, right? If you want your group to reflect the like true diversity or nature of the community that you're organizing in.
To lessen the load. Sometimes groups only have a small core group, and by increasing that reach, not only do you tap into new people, but it helps lessen the load and reduce burnout.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Also, if you're doing this version, then you can always use more people, so long as you're setting them up to do something useful, right? So to build people power, but you want to like specific reason why, like what's their job, how are they building people power by joining? Cool. I'm going to move us into this question, which is what in the past has motivated you to join a group? Why would you show up to that first meeting or that first event?
Their values were really aligned with what you wanted to do or how you felt.
Awesome. How did you know that?
They either had a clear purpose or their message really resonated.
Oh. What else?
Show up is the best statement you can make in support.
To contribute.
To contribute, yeah.
To a certain cause or whatever it might be.
Great. You felt like there was something you could do by coming along. Cool. Related to that is that you, and it's similar to Don's idea, is that like you could see that it would be useful for you to show up. You could tell it was, or you thought it might be, that you would actually be able to have an impact by showing up.
Have an impact, yeah.
I felt that joining Stopadani McNamara, I actually joined by someone going, hey, do you want to come along and can you do this for us? And that's how I got involved, because I felt I had something to do and I was going to actually make a difference.
You must have something to do, Bryn.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what gets them going.
Mm-hmm. Just give them a task and they'll stick around most of the time.
Yeah, because that tells you that, you know, that they do have a job, that they actually are able to be useful. It's not just come along and, because it's so awkward, right? When someone's like, come along, and then you're like, oh, you're all just having a conversation amongst yourself. You don't really need me. Why am I here? I have things to do. But yeah, if someone gives you a task and you're like, oh, yes. Sometimes that can be a really little task. There's like a bit of a concept we use in organizing, which is like ask someone to bring the lemonade. So this is back in the old times when we used to have real meetings in person at people's houses or community halls, and you ask someone, oh, can you bring the lemonade? Then they're more likely to show up because they have a job to do. If they don't come, there won't be any lemonade.
I've had a new one recently too, with a lot of people out of work. They now have the capacity. They already had shared values, but they didn't have time, but now they do.
Yeah. What about, I want to bring up this thing that Damien raised earlier, which is fun. Won't be bad, at least. Also, Bryn, in your example, was it someone you know that asked you to do something? How did you meet that person?
Yeah, it was actually a family member who was just meeting at Christmas lunch or something. Yeah, so that whole networking with people that you know does work, I find.
Yeah, you're pretty brave, I think, to go along to a meeting where you don't know anyone. Like most of us would much rather go if we know a friend is going or a family member.
Yeah, very important.
Definitely.
Cool. All right. This is fantastic. You've said almost all the things that I was going to suggest. I did just want to like bring it back to some of the things we talked about earlier on. So often for some of these things, like knowing that it's going to be a good use of your time or a way to contribute, you want to know that the other person cares about the issue, and you want you want to know you want them to know why you care. Often like having an actual relationship with a person really helps, or building one, even if it's just in that first conversation. You want to just make it really clear to them, how is this a good use of their time, how will they actually be making an impact, and that it'll be fun. So this is the recruitment cycle, which is just when they're first joining a group. So basically, the first thing is ask. You ask them to help out and offer as much responsibility as is appropriate. So if someone comes along and they are really skilled in a certain thing, and they've said, I'm ready to like jump in and do this, like you can give them a lot of responsibility if you trust them to do it and if it's appropriate, or you can give them a little bit. If you give someone, often it's a bit of a challenge. Like you want to give someone an amount that matches where they're at in their commitment and who they are and what they know about the group and what you know about them. So it could just be bring the lemonade, could be what's a Zoom version of that? It could be, can you take notes during the meeting, or something like that. Remind them the day before, on the day as well can be good. Can be an email, a text message, but good for people to be reminded. Include, so make them feel welcome when they come on the day. What are some things you can do to make someone feel welcome when they come to a meeting or an event?
Actually welcome them.
Actually welcome them. Great. What else?
Smile.
Smile. Yes.
Voice.
Yeah, that's great. Ask them a question about themselves or their life. Show that you care about them as a person and not just a body that showed up to your meeting. Often inviting them to like have something to eat or like where to sit for in-person things can be really good. Just like always remember how awkward it was the first time you walked into that meeting, and that like they're probably fighting some of those things, and you just want to make it as normal and nice as possible. And then thank them. So I would try to do this like the day after or the next day, or just a few days later, that says, acknowledges that they came to the meeting, thank them for their time, but also this part is really important, is spell out the impact that they made by coming along. So if it was that like you were gathered for an event, like, you came to this stall and we collected 150 signatures for our petition, that's going to make a big impact in getting the council to do the thing we want. Like you want to tell them like what their time led to. Often a nice way to do that in these times is take a screenshot, a photo of the people on the Zoom call and show like, look, we built some community and we built some skills together, and send that in an email the next day. But this part about spelling out the impact is what's going to convince them to say yes to your ask the next time. And then it's a cycle, because you have to invite them to the next meeting too. You can't just expect that they'll show up for like once they've been to one. Does this make sense? Does this feel true for your experience of when you've got involved in stuff?
Yeah, this is so the way that I got involved with PCAN was Jack, one of the members, actually met Jack and Helen met me in person and kind of, went through some of the things that they were about and what made me want to join. And actually having that one-on-one, connection initially is what made me be brave in that I don't know anyone in the group, and joining and seeing how I fit in and how I can contribute. So it made a big difference for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, it can feel like silly, like saying all this stuff out, because it feels so obvious when you look at it. But I just find it's not always a common experience to have that like really nice entry point into a group like that. And so that's why we train on tools like this.
May I ask, do you think the conditions will change because we now have this upheaval and disruption of from the COVID virus, and adjustments to people's expectations, particularly young people's expectations? Will that somehow affect this recruitment cycle you've been?
Yeah, I mean, I think the principles are the same, but how you do it would change. So like for my group, we have welcome calls pretty regularly, where we will have like a Zoom call like this, and we'll like play some games and talk about our strategy and our values, and then like set people up in pathways for next steps to take action. But we have found that it's this bit about like why is it a useful use of your time, and like what actually can you do under these like really tough conditions of lockdown, probably means you need to spend a little bit more time in the like inclusion and making it fun space, and also in the making it really clear like what can we actually do. So I want to come back to what Belinda said about this like conversation. So this is a bit of a tool for having recruitment conversations. It's probably not the exact one. I think you guys had a relational conversation, which is a bit like a longer version that you often go through when you're trying to like step people into leadership and like really understand where they're coming from and like why they want to help and what they want to do, which is a tool we could do another day. But this is a recruitment conversation for just sort of a guide for how to have a conversation where you can connect with someone on a personal and a values level, but then get them to come and do a thing. And Ed, this is a warning for you. We're going to do breakouts very soon. Thank you. So this is the 4 C's. It's just like another framework. So connect, which is say who you are, form a connection. So this is like kind of what we did at the top of this call tonight, where you connect on values like, I also think about my kids, my nieces and nephews, when I think about climate change, like something like that. And it can, be a bit clunky sometimes to figure out how to start a conversation at that values level, but this is like a practice thing. Context, what's going on? Why is it important? Why is it urgent? Why should I come to this meeting this night? Commitment, make a specific ask, actually ask for something. And catapult, make a further opportunity. So if someone is like, totally, I'll obviously be there at 6 p.m. on Thursday, no doubt, then that's a great time for you to go, oh, cool, could you actually bring a friend? Because they're keen and they maybe can do more and want to do more. And why would you stop them at the first ask if you can offer them another way to help? So any questions about that framework? Sorry, I know I raced through it. I will leave this slide up in a moment when we get to it.
Can we have 5 C's?
Oh, do you want another C? What's your other C?
Well, between comment and context, I think put consideration.
Oh, let them consider. Yes.
No, I meant about empathy. Yeah, you make the approach, but then you communicate to the person that you understand the consideration of their situation before you go on to expressing your intentions and so on.
Yes, I think that C is maybe captured here in conversation, which is that it's between 2 people. So you can't just tell someone a whole lot of information. You need to like actually listen and hear where they're coming from. They might have some barriers that you can help them solve. I've never used Zoom before. Can you tell me about it? Do you want to have a practice Zoom? Like these kinds of things. Yeah. So what are we going to do now is I'm going to get you to have a try at this. So your mission is to recruit someone else on this call to come to the next Skill Up. So, hey, Ed, sorry to be a pain. Could you not include me in a room? Can I stay here? Thank you. So what we're going to do is get you to, actually, maybe Bryn, can you tell us what's the next session? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so the next session next week is going to be running through some digital media skills like social media and website messaging, etc., and some traditional media skills as well. So getting your message across, getting people to listen to what you're saying, and getting people to take notice of what you're trying to achieve. That's going to be run by Jess Harwood from the Sunrise Project next Wednesday, starting 6:30. So I've just tried to recruit you then, but let's see if we can recruit each other.
Fantastic. Well, you definitely did this bit. You did a very specific ask and a bit of context. So the bit I really want you guys to practice is the connect bit and linking it up to the context and commitment. So we're going to like break up and convince your partner to come along, maybe swap. I'll give you about 8 minutes, so 4 minutes each. Let's go. Thank you, Ed.
Oh, sorry, Kat. I think you might have to make me the host.
Oh,
I've done some host jumping.
I see.
And we'll be in breakouts in just a sec.
Do you have the power as contributing for the whole 2 hours? It's very impressive on the end of a long day. Yeah, but I guess like we sort of set off by sharing stories with each other and trying to like build that connection. We talked about power. We moved our stars along a spectrum and talked about the 2 different views of power, like monolithic and social power, and what it takes for people to start getting organized with each other and finding and building that social power. We talked about goal setting and how to do that strategically. We talked about the snowflake model and building leadership. We talked about forming strong teams and how to diagnose challenges in our teams. We talked about recruitment and we did some recruitment conversations. There's quite a lot of stuff. I'm keen to just know, are there any like sort of, I don't know, questions or things that are on top for you that you're turning around right now that you just like to use these last few minutes to surface? Yeah, so maybe what I'll do is I'll ask you to chuck some in the chat, but also I want to go around like one by one and just for you to share a reflection, something you're going to take away to your group or think about more or want to know more about. And what we'll do is I'll just get you to, I'm just going to like write an order, and the order is going to be the order people are on my screen, which is Ed, Rissa, Belinda, Bryn, Damien, Don, David, Seb, Hannah, Lynn, and then Hashwina. And I'm going to write it all out in the chat. So Ed, what's on top for you?
I think for me, some of the stuff we touched on earlier, looking at the structures of power, and then also looking towards the goal setting based on that kind of way of thinking is really topical for what we're doing at Progressive Port Phillip. And I think that we need to have a little bit of a chat about how we started at the start of the year, and probably it's time for a bit of a strategy check-in. And I think some of that strategic planning and also thinking about what kind of influence we want to have and our goals are actually going to be really helpful. And the conversations are helpful too. They're always great, and I love having them, and I'm looking forward to having lots more.
Fantastic, thanks for sharing. Rissia, can you share what you're sort of reflecting on?
It's actually Richard. My wife's
Sorry, Richard.
My wife's name is Risha, and she's in charge of talking.
So sorry, I've been calling you the wrong name all night. Sorry about that.
That's her name. Yes, I found it interesting. Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me.
No worries, we're glad to have you. Belinda, what are you reflecting on?
I guess definitely the goal setting is an important one for me, and kind of feeling what's connecting me with the group, and figuring out a little bit of the direction and what the shared purpose is. And yeah, I think I got a lot out of that in that sense, which is really good. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you. Bryn.
Yeah, I'll echo Belinda in that. PCAN can definitely benefit from going and looking at our goals and thinking about what we're trying to achieve. I think there's a lot of space to expand our goals as well. I think COVID has definitely sort of interrupted our train of thought. So it's all been up in the air. So I think sitting down and having a look at what we're doing there is a really good idea. And also the bit on recruitment and having roles and tasks for people to do. Like, it seems so obvious, but it, like, just having that reminder was like, oh yeah, I need to figure that out when I'm thinking about recruitment. So definitely take that back. Yeah.
Fantastic. Damien.
I think one of the most valuable things was talking about the request, you know, the process of asking people to do something as a way of involving them and welcoming them. And, you know, sort of just going from David's observation earlier about people having a bit more time and perhaps some motivation that might be born of sort of perhaps reconsidering some of their values in the light of what's been happening this year.
That's great. Thank you. Don.
Oh, thank you for tolerating an independent, yet to be attached. But the way property agents talk about selling houses is location, location, location. But for you and many others, I think the important issue is transparency, 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 because the first instinct of power is to evade and confuse the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. David.
Oh, well, Don, if you're not feeling attached, mate, can I suggest that you come along next Wednesday and we can help you to feel more attached? How would that be?
Yes, of course.
Excellent recruitment.
Wonderful. Can you bring someone along?
Well, I'd love to bring my wife along, but she's looking after the grandchildren up in Queensland, affected by COVID. But yeah, there's some very concerned neighbours here. This is in St Kilda. There's some very concerned neighbours, and
yes,
I will try to do as you say.
That's very kind. We look forward to welcoming you next week. And so to Kat's question, yes, it's good to be reminded of the steps and to find some new tools. I find each Zoom meeting I come to, there is more and more to learn. So it's just wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, love that beautiful example. Seb.
Yeah, actually, well, on first case, thanks for the space. But like on my side, that I don't belong to any group yet. I couldn't get in touch with many of you, so I still don't know where to but yeah, delighted to start and getting to know a little bit more of what's happening at the in this suburbs, right? And yeah. Port Phillip. So yeah, I'm kind of like on the first session of all this, like I was more like listening to what's happening, and yeah, slowly taking action. But definitely, I think I have a nice network of young people that are kind of willing to, on this same mindset, willing to also take action. So yeah, happy to get involved.
That's awesome. And hopefully some folks on this call will send you some messages and help you take that next step.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, good idea. Good.
Anna.
I think I'm sort of, well, I guess why I came here was to try to use a group. And I think it's, as you said, maybe because we haven't specified the goals, and there is a specific reason for that. But maybe that's why the group isn't effective. I mean, with 200 people, like why have they joined this group? Just something they've come across on Facebook and thought it would be a good idea, but it's not actually meeting their needs. So it's just got me thinking about why have they joined the group.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, they have joined the group because there's something about it that they're excited about. So it's maybe just kind of, I mean, maybe you should ask some of them.
Well, that's exactly what I've been jotting down, some survey questions.
Great. Oh, I'm excited to see where this goes. Very cool. Lynn, are you still with us?
Yep. So my thing was really around, I think it's the recruitment component. So we've certainly got really clear goals and aspirations for our group. I think some of those recruitment tips, really the connect, context, commitment, catapult, I think that's part of it. I think once you've got the clear goals, you can burn your people out otherwise. And so being able to be really clear and I mean, one of the interesting things is that nowadays it's hard to do an ask up front because often people are very busy, and sometimes it actually chases them away a lot more quickly. So you have to be really careful on the softening your asks and following through a little bit more with those sorts of things.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And Hashwin, are you still there?
Yeah. Yeah, just to echo everyone's sentiments, I feel like the recruitment part of it was really interesting, and even the things about keeping your team engaged. So, yeah.
Thank you everyone for sharing those reflections and for bringing so much energy and thoughtfulness to this call, and sharing all the knowledge that you have from your organizing in your groups. It was really a pleasure to spend some time with you and learn a bit more about what you're all doing. I'll throw back to Bryn for maybe final reminder about next steps.
Thank you, Kat. Can we give Kat a massive round of applause? We are so grateful that you joined us today. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So I do encourage everyone to come along to the session next week, which you all know about a lot now after our little practice. To everyone who indicated that they weren't in a group but are looking to get more involved, I'm going to reach out to you personally over the next couple of days, so we can have a little discussion and a catch up and see how you can start getting involved in PCAN or Progressive Port Phillip or any group that you feel like you can contribute to the most. And I will send a follow-up email to everyone else with some extra information and a recap of what happened, just so you have all that information with you. Are there any questions or comments before we finish up? Because we haven't run over time, I do apologise. But anything else anyone wanted to add?
Did you include those slides, the link to the slides in the follow-up?
Oh yes, I was going to ask if I could do that. I will include the slides in that email for everybody, for sure.
Great.